おはようございます。こんにちは。こんばんは。今週も Call and Response の時間が始まりました。Call and Response is a podcast where we try to incorporate principles that we learn from the books into our lives instead of passively consuming them. And the format that we're going to go with is, first of all, we're going to start off with a really brief summary of the book that we read that week. And then we're going to ask each other questions to try to internalize what we learned from the book. And lastly, we're going to talk about how we actually applied or implemented the principles into our lives from this book, but also from the books that we read in the past in this podcast. So it's going to be an ongoing process of us trying and experimenting with the learnings from the books into our real lives. So we welcome those who are curious to see the real world applications of the principles discussed in the books. And if you're interested, we also have a bi-weekly book schedule, so you can read along with us. And we welcome comments, questions, and book suggestions, so please feel free to reach out to us on Twitter or in the comment section below. With that said, we have a couple of housekeeping things to cover. As you may have noticed, we haven't posted our podcast in a while. And that is because we decided to change our schedule from weekly book reading to a bi-weekly book reading podcast. And the reason is because reading a book a week is pretty rigorous. Yeah, it took up quite some time, and we were both busy, so we decided to give ourselves a bit more time. On top of that, we couldn't read the books that we wanted to read outside of self-help books, so we figured that a bi-weekly session would be a fine balance to go with. So yeah, that's an update. And as I described in the format that we're going with, we added a section where we talk about how we implemented the learnings from what we read into our lives. So that's going to be an additional section, and it's not going to be an exclusive segment to the book that we read this week. It's going to be a ongoing process, like I explained. So yeah, those are the two things that we wanted to share. With that said, Lika is going to take over the book summary for this week.
So this week we read Essentialism by Greg, I think it's pronounced Mckeown. And in one sentence, I think the book tries to send a message of what is the most important thing that you should be doing with your own time and resources right now. And it's kind of like cutting out the inefficiencies in the different aspects of your life. So it has about 20 chapters, each going into different aspects of essentialism, but we specifically want to talk about 5, or that we believe are the essentialism concepts, principles. And so first one is about trade-off, and it's about assessing the most important things to do rather than blindly doing everything that sounds interesting. So, in other words, it's about opportunity cost, and Greg goes into detail about choosing one activity just for the sake of focus rather than splitting your attention to do 2 or a few more activities because your performance suffers due to that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. The second chapter we want to focus on is escape, which is about making the time to think about what is important and essential to you. In a sense of like unplugging from your surrounding, your noise, and giving yourself a little bit more time to slow down and to think of what you should be thinking. So that's the second one. Third one is clarify. And how having a clear objective and guideline can help us perform more effectively with less confusion. And he talks about mission statements by companies, and that was a lot of about having a clear true north so that everything kind of falls into place. Fourth is uncommitting or uncommit, and it's the notion of being okay with rejecting offers or uncommitting from like a project when you think that it is not essential to you. And I will bring a little bit about my experience with uncommitting too. And lastly, it's about editing and constantly refining and reflecting on how your current track and direction can be fixed or corrected in the right direction again. So I think we think these 5 points were the core principles that Greg mainly wanted to talk about. So moving on to the reflection and Q&A section of our podcast. The first question and kind of reflection I had is about the concept of escape. And to reiterate, it's about giving yourself some time to slow down and to think about your current situation. And at least that's my interpretation of it. And I think it's really important in core to actually anything, because not just essentialism, but in any other, say like principles or whatever, just you want to incorporate into life, you first have to take a step back and slow down, and then you have some capacity and literal mental space to incorporate those principles into your life. And because there's one example in the book about an executive staying at a company a few years, I think it was 5 years too long, simply because he had been too caught up with the projects at work. And this is a quote from the book. When Greg explains, he says, "One leader I worked with admitted to staying at a company 5 years too long. Why? Because he was so busy in the company he didn't take time to decide whether he should be at the company. The demands of each day kept him from really stepping back to get perspective." And I think this is really important to even before we talk about any other essentialism principles, because like I said, it's what gives us the space and time to think about those principles we talk or the book talks about. And so so that's why I wanted to bring it up, because without it, it'll be difficult to embark on this journey of essentialism. But what do you think, John?
I agree. I think without having the empty time to think about yourself and with yourself, it's really difficult or almost impossible to think about what's really important to us and to calibrate our goals and our behaviors and our day-to-day lives will be impossible. So before even considering anything about essentialism or these techniques, if I don't have a clear idea of what I want to do, I would want to sit down with myself, make time to be alone and flesh out and try to nail down what is truly important to me before moving or making my next move.
Yeah. And I think we covered a book called Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport previously, and I think that's a great book to use it as a tool to create that time to think for yourself.
Especially today.
Guess. Yeah, you can probably guess that it's about minimalizing your digital life. So, and I think that's a really big culprit in taking away time from us. So, and another point that I want to make, which I kind of touched on earlier, was uncommitted. And I thought I really resonated with this part because I'm going to tell a story. It's not really a story, but it's just what I had experienced in the past, where I was an intern. I was doing an internship at a company, and it was like a few weeks long, really, a week, a month or 2 weeks, a few weeks long, but I wasn't learning much. Halfway through, I think it was like in my 4th week or something, I wasn't learning much, and on top of that, it wasn't paid. And I remember the manager from this company saying that, they can leave, as in the interns can leave if the experience is not enough as the intern's compensation. And so there are a lot of kind of the different aspects of the internship that made me realize that staying there wasn't essential to me, and that if I'm not gaining much from it, I can absolutely, to me, I think it's appropriate to uncommit or in a more literal sense, like quit from the company, which I did. So I quit just a few weeks before the internship ended, I had my other interns, co-interns, that were trying to convince me to stay, or some people didn't think it was a great idea. Of course, it doesn't feel good for the full-time employees there to think that an intern quit at their company. But I'm saying all this because I think even with those with those, what's it called, like factors in mind, that are, you could say, like against me, against what I'm trying to do, I still did, because I realized that those remaining weeks, so those weeks, so let's say if it was 6 week long and I quit on the 4th week, the remaining 2 weeks are important for me, and I know I can make use of those 2 weeks very effectively, such as studying for myself or studying another course or whatever. And so because I valued my own time and I knew my value of my ability to make use of that time effectively, I was able to uncommit rather easily for me. It was an easy decision. So this is all to say, I really agree with what Greg is trying to say, that uncommitting is is difficult a lot of times, but it's sometimes, most of the time, like, not most of the time, but it could be the right decision as well.
I also think it's essential to know how to uncommit, because it ultimately leads you to the next thing that's important to you. And I had a similar experience with uncommitting when I used to work part-time at a yakiniku restaurant or Korean barbecue restaurant, where it was my first time working at a restaurant, or like in the food industry, and it was fun at first, obviously, because everything new is interesting. So getting to know people that were outside of my social comfort zone was also fun. But after a while, I figured that I was not really learning anything other than learning how to marinate meat and put meat beautifully on plates. But and I was making money, but that was all I was getting out of it. So I realized that and tried to configure what I really wanted to do at the time. And then I concluded that I wanted to focus on things related to photography. So I moved jobs and started working at a select store and took photos for their e-commerce website. And I thought this was fun because it was photography involved and I got money out of that. But then after a while, I realized that this was it was a rather systematic procedure. It wasn't really creative as I thought, and I realized that I wanted to do something more creative. And by quitting that place, I was able to move on to freelancing, and from there I was able to expand more into different areas of creative photography and video jobs. But then after doing those things, I started to realize that I wasn't really into fashion or street type of work, photography work. So then I stopped accepting jobs related to fashion and things related to that. So I guess I've been practicing uncommitting and editing in a sense, and we both have, and it's led us to a better place as a whole through this practice. So I can see how uncommitting and editing is a really important skill to have when trying to get to where you want to be.
Yeah, I think just a lot, like, I don't want to confuse uncommitting with just like blindly quitting. It's quitting with the purpose of doing something better in mind. So yeah, just want to clarify that.
I have a question. We both went to the same high school, so we both did similar activities, but we were also both maximalists when it comes to the activities that we did, as we both played basketball, we both traveled in and out of the country for choir, and We both played video games together in our free times.
Mm-hmm.
And the book talks about trade-offs and how committing to one thing can lead to effective results, effective performance. So I wanted to ask if that chapter changed your mind in any way, or if you have any thoughts about this. Moving on.
Yeah. So I used to, and I still kind of do, think that if there's option A or B, I do A and B, which works sometimes, but and it doesn't work the other times. But that's my base mentality, right? And you mentioned about basketball, like choir and video games, and in short, I don't. Since it's in the past, I don't regret with my decisions because I was able to get the benefits or the gains from each activity without having to put in 100% of my energy. So basketball, it was knowing how it feels like to play in a team sport. I didn't have to be like a starter or to be the best player on the team to know that. And get to be on basketball trips with you guys was fun too. I think that's all the memories. Like the memories were kind of what I wanted to as well. Choir, same thing. Traveling was choir trips were really fun, and I got to socialize because we went to a all boys school. We got to socialize with girls from our sister schools, and the video games too. There were so many memories that we made that were fun, and it's quite frankly priceless. So I didn't have to be put 100% of my time, and I'm totally fine with the outcome and what I gain out of it. And so it kind of, I have this, if you imagine like, so my idea of trade-off is that if you have this, imagine this U curve, and like on one tip of towards the top is like putting all your focus in one activity, and then the benefit or the performance is all up here. And then on the other side of the U, that's activity number 2, and same thing. But and in the middle, it's like doing both activities, and where you get 50% of the gain or benefit. And I think that's what I did. The last option was 50% of everything in high school and also right now. And I think that's fine because it also depends on what you ultimately want from those activities that you're doing. And if you want to be the best in playing video games, then I think you're going to have to put in 100% of effort. But for me, if it's for different reasons, social and other memories that I'm creating, I'm fine with doing everything sparsely. So I think that's one point that Greg kind of didn't mention, is that he didn't have to, but I want to remind everyone that doing a mediocre amount of effort, a medium effort into different activities is also acceptable. Just depends on your goal.
Yeah, I agree, because my answer would be, if the mix of these activities that I was partaking in is not sustainable or unhealthy, maybe I should reconsider the activities that I did. But if my objective wasn't in sustainability and health, I don't think I would have changed anything. So it ultimately depends on what you want to do with the things you do on it.
Yeah. So
So speaking of the things that you want to do, the next question I want to ask is, do you think you're doing the most important thing you can be doing today? Because that was the main theme of the book.
I think so. I think I'm starting to, and yes, this is a good question because I'm at like this inflection point. But so even before I discuss about that, I think it's important that you need to know your true north or your ultimate goal in life or in whatever you want to do, and after knowing what your true north, that's how you able to reverse engineer and break down to like what's most important, what are the most important things to do today. And in my case, I think it's always been kind of like having spending quality time with my family, and also having family as well. Have family of my own. And in order to do that, my so that's my true north. And but up to now, to this point, I've been focusing on building my career so that I will be comfortable to support my family, or go on trips with my family and spend quality time however I want to with my family or important people in my life. And so, and recently I started working, so a lot of my focus has been not on building my career, but it's been so sorry, I should backtrack. It has been on focusing on building my career, but now that I have started working, there's a little bit more like mental space that I can now allot to figuring out what is the most meaningful and quality way to spend time with my family or spend money with my family. And so right now I realized that once I started working, my weekends have been kind of like wasted, because I realized like I'm not using my resources, my time and money in the best way possible to find the most relaxing and meaningful way to spend time with my family. So, and it's difficult now with the pandemic too, but right now my focus has been trying to figure out how I will be able to spend the money I earn from work to finding quality time with my family. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Please clarify anything I forgot to mention.
No, you mentioned that your focus is to try to spend time with your try to spend quality time with your family, and you're in the process of trying to figure out how to do that specifically, and that's your answer to the most important thing you are doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. And I'm starting to do it now because I'm started working, and before working I was only focusing on career. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Right,
yeah. So that's my true north. But yeah, what about you? Do you think, like, what is your true north, and do you think you're doing the most important, same question, most important thing?
I think the true north aspect is a work in progress. I think for me it's gonna keep changing as I age, but I do have a structure that I base this true north on in that moment, which is to try to help others improve or motivate people to live or improve their well-being as a result of my curiosity or my skill. So what do I mean by skill and ability? Or skill is my creative sense and ability, which is right now photography and video and just visual communication in general. And my curiosity right now is the human mind, how it works, and I want people to improve their lives and feel better about their lives and just be happy to live. So it's more on like problem solving for each individual on a daily level, not like a not really so like a not like legal or medical ways, but in the most smallest ways possible, because I believe that that's the most effective way to build up something to make it more effective. And so that's, I guess, my true north, to try to help people as a result of my curiosity and skill. So I asked myself, what can that be right now? And right now, using my skill, which is photography and video, I'm not sure how I can help other people try to improve their lives, because the way I'm approaching photography and video is more on the creative, artistic end, like artistic, expressive end, which can be a bit ambiguous, and it can be interpreted in thousands of ways or countless ways.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really effective in try to help other people's lives. So I thought it should be something more direct. And based on my curiosity for the human mind and psychology and philosophy, I thought maybe coaching might be a good option because that's more direct and it impacts people on a smaller scale that can lead to bigger outcomes. But I thought this might be a better suit instead of other methods like being a psychiatrist or trying to help people on a legal scale or on a bigger scale, like a top-down thing. So, and I also thought that coaching can be applied to other aspects of our lives, not only in our professions, but just within our families or friends and our loved ones. I thought it could add some practical skill that can be applied to other places, meaning I might be able to implement it into my creative work too in the long run. So I think for now, the most important thing I can do is to enroll for a coaching course on Udemy or just any online course, which is I am gonna enroll for a coaching course on Udemy, which is why I said Udemy. But I think in that sense, I'm going to start doing what's most important to me, because I think that's based on my true north, like respected to my true north. So I'm pretty excited to do this. だね.
So I realized that like there's a spectrum where like on one end it's scientific and more like you said, psychiatrists and physicians, and then on the other end it's more artistic, which is like you said, photography, videography. And I think coaching is kind of like in the middle, where you're striking the balance of artistic and scientific, but I think it fits you because you already have that artistic background, but you don't want to go too far into like technical, and this is like a fine balance. だね.
Yeah, hopefully I can merge it really nicely in the middle.
Yeah.
But yeah,
for sure.
So yeah, from this point on, I think I will be more clear than before.
So we are here at the last section, which is the application section. And just as a reminder, here we talk about how we have been able to apply the principles we learned in the past, not just on this week's book, but also in past books that we've read. So we'll first cover Essentialism, which is this week's book, and then we'll talk about any other principles later on. So right. So first, I'll go ahead. Another chapter, the different chapter in Essentialism was this chapter of buffer. And it is kind of like just like a not hack, but like a philosophy to use a lot of buffer throughout your day when you book your calendar and schedule. And I think it was like something about book 1.5 times the time that you expect the task to be done or completed in. And so I took this to heart and then I had a kind of like back appointments the other day with my advisors from my school. And I think the old me would have booked it like 4 to 4:15, and then the second one from 4:15 to 4:30, and the third one from 4:30 to 4:45. And I still have that itch to do it every time, but this time, so I took a step back and I did just 4 to 4:15, and then I did 4:30 to 4:45. So I kept 15 minutes in between each appointment, and oh god, it was super helpful because I didn't feel rushed, and every appointment did go over by like 5 to 10 minutes. So, but I was still not late to the second one, and I don't know, life was good. So I really kind of felt how effective it was in that short period of time. So I really, yeah, I'll never book things back to back anymore. um, Second thing is sleep. Greg talked about it in the book too, but sleep is really powerful in order to just kind of be human, right? I mean, I'm sure everyone knows that. But what I didn't know was I thought I was pretty conscious about winding down and my sleeping habits and the conditions that I sleep in. But what I didn't really focus on until recently was keeping the sleeping cycle consistent, like when you sleep and when you wake up. And I've heard of that before, but I wasn't always trying to apply it. And so, but now that work started, I have to wake up at a certain time every day, and I usually sleep at a certain time every night. And it's like I don't have to worry about sleeping anymore, because it used to be that like, oh, I have to sometimes take like melatonin pills so that I feel sleepy to fix my circadian rhythm and all that stuff. But I immediately get sleepy at a certain time, and I wake up rather smoothly, naturally in the morning, and I feel the most important thing is I feel more rested than when I was sleeping in a scattered sleep cycles. And I thought, wow, like this is so cool. I should have applied it earlier. And yeah, so it doesn't necessarily talk about this like consistency in the book, but the sleep chapter reminded me of this, and I thought it was a cool reminder for other people too how effective it is. But yeah, that's about it for my essentialism applications.
Nice. From my end, I've been practicing some of the principles that were mentioned in the book mildly already. Like, for example, edit. For edit, I plan everything on Google Calendar by the minute. Well, not minute, but like 30 minutes, let's say. And I try to stay strict to that schedule and do things accordingly. But life happens, and sometimes you don't get things done within that time frame. So I edit, as in I expand or reduce the amount of time that I give myself for certain tasks and try to adjust accordingly. And the buffer principle also helps in this, because it lets you plan out ahead of time instead of trying to pack in every minute into that time block, or every effort you try to put in. But so it reminded me of how this helped me be productive on a day-to-day basis, how buffer and edit. Otherwise, I didn't really have much, so I tried practicing his advice on cleaning out the closet, and so I got rid of a lot of my clothes, even though I didn't have much clothes to begin with. I realized that I had too many t-shirts that I kept because of nostalgia or just memory. So I said goodbye to them after asking if I really needed this. And the only thing that kept me from throwing it away was that sense of nostalgia. And nostalgia, unfortunately, is not really essential to my life. As if for now, at least for now. Yeah, especially in the form of shirts, I think. It takes up a lot of space, and the fact that you have to choose what you have to wear in the morning is energy that you're using, and getting rid of the options that you have, I think, can help you save that energy. So getting rid of clothes was definitely helpful. And then that led to me getting rid of like cameras, because I had a lot of cameras and lenses, and after looking through all of them, I realized that some, even though they were like pretty expensive and really esteemed, I wasn't really using them, and it felt like I was keeping them just because of like how good they were in the social light. But again, I asked myself whether this was truly essential to me and what I wanted to do right now, and I decided no. So selling it was like putting my baby down a river, like letting my baby go in a river, but it happened. Uh, I got rid of almost half of my camera and lens belongings. Um, it was sentimental, but it made me feel better, and now I have more money to spend on other things that are more essential in my life. And then that led me to books. Well, books are pretty easy because it was either you wanted to read it more than once, or you didn't want to read it, or if you didn't want to read it at all. And I realized that a lot of the books that I owned were like impulse purchases, so like books that I thought were good, or books that people said were good that I didn't end up reading, or just didn't suit my reading rhythm or style. So I got rid of those. And Mercari is such a powerful tool when practicing essentialism, I figured, like, because even the things that I thought were like garbage, people would actually pay money for it. So yeah, well, of course not for things that are like worth almost nothing, but I think it's at least worth trying to putting it up on Mercari to see how much people would actually spend on it before throwing it in the trash.
So
yeah, and lastly, friends. Regarding friends, I found myself feeling negative after talking to certain people, and I thought if they weren't adding to my life in any other way, there wasn't a point of me interacting with them. So I totally stopped talking to them and muted them on every social media platform and just excluded them from my life. It does sound cold and rude and harsh, but I asked myself the question of whether they were essential to me or not, and the conclusion was no. So what other reason is there for me to keep them in my life, you know? And I feel so much better. I have more time and energy to think about other things. I have more time to read books that I want to read, more time to talk to people like Lee Kai. Yeah, you just have more space, and I think that's the point of being essential. So overall, very sentimental, but very calibrating as an experience. Effective, yeah. So yeah, that's my learning from or application in my life from essentialism.
That's a thorough clean out you had there.
I did. I still have a lot to go, though, because after starting this cycle of cleaning out, like everything seems unnecessary. And I mean,
maybe that is the case.
Yeah, and
yeah,
in the book he also talks about how essentialists assume that everything is non-essential. So I think I'm getting in that groove of being an essentialist.
Nice.
Cool. So should we move on to our next book?
Yeah. Okay. So next, I think we both had something we applied from digital minimalism, and in my case, I was able to, not able to, but I tried reducing my gaming time. So I like to play video games. So does Johnny Boy. But I made a kind of like a rule to make it so that I am only playing video games socially. So such as yours truly, Johnny Boy. But and once I stopped, or once I incorporated that rule, there's much more time for me that opened up, and I realized that wow, like all the free time I've kind of have been filling it with gaming, and that took away a lot of that escape time that we mentioned earlier. But now with that escape time, it really present in my life. I get to slow down, so gaming minimalism has been helpful for me.
Similar from my end. I did this through establishing a specific operation procedure, which is mentioned in the book through the digital minimalism in the chapter of the digital declutter. I asked myself whether I just questioned every digital technology use in my life, and I came to the conclusion that I don't need to use my phone when I'm home, other than when I'm eating, and I don't need to go on social media other than when I post something or try to connect with new people, and I don't need to game other than when I'm playing with my friends. So yeah, and this procedure, it was really tough because once you stop doing something, your body has to get used to it. So for the first couple of days, you feel yourself urging to check your phone or check social media because you're so used to that dopamine reward circuit. And for gaming, it's like, oh, I want to. It's similar. You're too used to that dopamine circuit. So it was tough to cut these aspects of my life, cut these outlets from my life. But I kept reminding myself. I don't have the paper with me right now because I got used to it. But during that week, I wrote out everything where I can see it every day. So I put it on my computer right here. It's a desktop computer, and I literally see it whenever I'm in the room or whenever I'm on my desk. So that helped me push through with staying true to what I believed in, even instead of being prone to the negative or bad habits that I was used to. And yeah, I have to say it made me feel so much better than and more aware of how much time I was spending and how negative I was feeling through this dopamine cycle, and how this simple habit can change your attitude and your motivation and just how you live on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, most importantly, it made time and energy, right? And with this new time and energy, I implemented high quality leisure, like Cal Newport suggested in the book. And I asked myself what kind of high quality leisure I wanted to do. And I always wanted to cook because I used to work as I said before, I used to work at a Korean barbecue or yakiniku restaurant. And I started getting into cooking. I was touching food every day, and I was getting close to it, and I was cooking every so often at home as well. But every time I tried to cook at home, I would attempt really challenging meals, and I would fail miserably and stop cooking from the next day. So I wanted to cook on a day-to-day basis, also because I wanted to learn how to budget what I eat, my daily expenses, so that to prepare me for when I live alone. So I started cooking lunch every day, and and now I'm in charge of the groceries as well, and it's really fun cooking every day. It's been 2.5 weeks now, but I'm not pressuring myself to make a full course meal or anything. I'm just trying to be as consistent as possible, try to make food that fills me up and that isn't unhealthy, and that's good, most importantly. But and learning different types of food on YouTube and this Twitter posts or just blogs is a new discovery for me. It's like a new hobby, and yeah, I really enjoy it. And I really enjoy my family reacting or just having a good time eating the
Mhm.
food that I make. It brings me enjoyment through that, and even though I do enjoy cooking as a process itself, I love the sound, I love the texture, I love mixing things and smelling things, so that's fun. So it's both a sensational and a social source of pleasure for me now, instead of
Yeah.
being lost in the endless scrolling on social media or just non-essential things that were detrimental to me.
Mm.
And I also reduced our grocery budget by half, apparently, because I cook every day. Our family used to order a lot of food or just buy pre-made food, which is why our budget was pretty high. But once we started
Mm.
doing this, I apparently cut the cost. So it's doing good in a lot of different areas. So I'm excited to keep going.
Yeah, and it's one of those leisures that the output is really useful because you get to eat it,
So,
and so it's really rewarding in that sense.
and I wish after like doing this consistently, I started to like wish that I can eat my photos and videos too. Because I spend, the amount of time I spend, みたいな. Anyways. But yeah, that's about it, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So far, these are the things that we were able to apply to our lives from the books we read. It might not be a lot compared to the amount discussed in the books, but we both think that it takes some time to internalize and try to output it. So we're giving ourselves time, this, なんていうの, loose end for us to try to output it.
Mm.
So it's going to be an ongoing process, as I mentioned in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's about this for. That's about it for this week.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for listening again, and we'll see everyone in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye.